and welcome to the India Business Day 2019. May I ask that everybody finds their seat in front of the stage, and you'll get to hear a little bit more about today's program. So, as the first collaborative initiative on really bringing Norway and India closer together during the biannual North Shipping, I'm so happy to be facilitating this afternoon on behalf of the organizers, nicci, Norwegian-Indian Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Oslo Business Region, Nordic Hub India, Innovation Norway, the Research Council of Norway, and Norway and India, the Royal Norwegian Embassy in Delhi and Consulate General in Mumbai. We're so happy that you're all gathered here today, and we will guide you through the relations of Norway-India on various levels, focused primarily on energy and shipping. We're starting out with a welcome address from Arundhati Das from the Embassy of India to Norway, before looking into business opportunities in maritime ports and infrastructure by Mr. Ashish Kumar Singh, Secretary of Ports and Transport from the government of Maharashtra. Then we will hear from Mr. Soni Kapoor, who will give us an introduction on India on track to be the largest economy in the world. And Soni is the director of Redefine think tank. Then we will hear from Mr. Solomon Darwin, traveling all the way over from Berkeley for this event, talking about open innovation and business models and how to expand markets in India. Then we will hear from Helge Tryti, director of Innovation Norway in India, looking at the world's largest emerging market with huge potential for Norwegian companies. Before Ms. Sanjam Sahi Gupta from Sitara Shipping will talk about diversity as a driver for innovation and business and a current collaboration between Norway and India. The Research Council of Norway is represented by Executive Director Fridtjof Fossum Inander, talking about priorities and opportunities through the funding and support ecosystem. And then our last speaker for the plenary session is Ms. Hege Brende, Executive Director of Norwegian Hydropower Center, talking about how we can reach the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, with research-based innovation and with a perspective seen from hydropower. After that, we will move on to a sequence of breakout sessions that I will describe a little bit further as we are rounding off the plenary session. But we will not have any room for Q&As during the plenary session, so I would warmly welcome everybody in the audience to select their preferred side session afterwards, so that you get the opportunity to really deep dive into the competence and continuing collaborations existing across Norway and India, and to get to talk a little bit more in depth and seize new business opportunities, which is, after all, why we're all gathered here today. So, without further ado, I would like to invite Councillor Arundhati Das onto the stage, representing the Embassy of India to Norway. Welcome.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, namaskar and very good afternoon. Today I'm here on behalf of Ambassador of India, who is actually out of station and is supposed to be here today, but due to some unavoidable circumstances, he's not able to return to Oslo. However, he has conveyed his greetings and good wishes for the success of India Business Day. I am very delighted to be a part of this business day today, and on behalf of Embassy of India, I welcome you all. Ladies and gentlemen, we have deep-rooted and enduring ties with Norway for more than 70 years now. In fact, our relationship is as old as the independence of India. Since then, India and Norway have been enjoying a cordial and friendly relationship. Both the countries respect each other for their commonly shared values such as democracy, human rights, and rule of law. Over the years, our friendly bilateral ties have grown with regular exchange of visits from both the countries. In 2014, our former President, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, paid a state visit to Norway, which was a first ever visit by any President of India to Norway. During his visit, there were deliberations on issues of mutual interest, and several agreements, MOUs, were signed for cooperation in key sectors such as earth sciences, scientific research, medicine, defense, culture, etc., to strengthen our bilateral relations. He then had extended an invitation to Prime Minister Erna Solberg to visit India, which we are happy took place beginning of this year. Friends, Prime Minister Solberg paid a state visit to India in January this year, which brought the two nations closer. The India-Norway Business Summit organized during the visit was a big success, which forged cooperation between the business fraternity of India and Norway, and 15 B2B agreements were signed. Apart from that, a landmark cooperative initiative, the India-Norway Ocean Dialogue, was launched to give impetus to cooperation in the field of blue economy. Friends, in recent years, we have witnessed growth in economic and commercial relations between India and Norway, especially in areas such as oil and gas, shipping and maritime industries, renewable energy, offshore projects, and service sectors. There has been a spurt in trade, investment, and transfer of technology. The total bilateral trade has increased from US $974 million in 2013-14 to US $12.02 billion in 2017-18. Moreover, the portfolio investment from Norway to India also has grown impressively. Investments by Global Pension Fund Global in India have increased from 81.86 billion in 2015 to approximately 95.78 billion by the end of 2017, which were invested in 275 investments in equity and 36 investment in fixed income bonds. Friends, you all must have been following the Indian general elections for the 17th Lok Sabha, the lower house of the Indian Parliament, which was a mammoth democratic exercise with about 900 million people as eligible voters, and voters' turnout was about 67%, the highest ever, as well as highest participation by women voters. The incumbent government of National Democratic Alliance got re-elected with landslide victory. The Bharatiya Janata Party won 303 seats, further increasing its substantial majority, and the BJP-led NDA won 353 seats out of 542 seats. This mood of the electorate was reflected in Indian Stock Exchange also, and the Sensex crossed its highest mark of 40,000 and Nifty 12,000. Ladies and gentlemen, India today is the 6th largest economy in the world with $2.6 trillion US, accounting for 15% of global growth. Indian economy has been growing at 7% for several years now. At this rate, we expect to become a $5 trillion economy by 2025. This holds immense potential for our global stakeholders to establish energy, infrastructure, and technology collaborations with us. We manufacture everything from satellites, light aircraft, cars to major technology industrial products, we have the 8th largest scientific human resource pool in the world. In this context, I may highlight another factor which has worked in India's favor is its demography. Demographics can change the pace and pattern of economic growth in a country. And India's sprawling 1.3 billion population base offers a significantly large consumer market and a cost-efficient labor force. Moreover, 65% of India's population falls in the age group of 18 to 35 years who are digitally savvy with rising purchasing power. Friends, the fundamentals of our economy are sound. Hard policy decisions fostered under a stable democratic governance system position India as a unique destination for international trade and business. Investors are coming to India, encouraged by Government of India's initiative to transform the way of doing business. Several next-generation structural reforms have paved the way for sustainable high growth. The launch of a unified tax system, the goods and services tax, the insolvency and bankruptcy code, as well as the launch of single-point interfaces have pushed India up to the 77th position on the 2019 World Bank Ease of Doing Business ranking. You will be happy to know that India attracted US $239 billion worth of foreign direct investments from May 2014 to June 2018. This period also witnessed the liberalization of India's FDI policy, allowing the majority of the FDI to come through the automatic route. Investors' confidence has been echoed by the fact that India now figures among the top 25 in A.T. Kearney's Foreign Direct Investment Confidence Index. 100% FDI is allowed in 92% sectors like mining, construction, aviation, greenfield and brownfield projects, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, India has been working to improve the well-being of its people, who form 1/6 of humanity. Being a young nation, the foremost need at present is to create job opportunities and better infrastructure. Both are linked with investments. Therefore, in recent years, there has been unprecedented focus on manufacturing and infrastructure. We have worked hard to promote manufacturing to create jobs for our youth. Investments through Make in India initiative have been well supported by programs like Digital India and Skill India. Under the Make in India initiative, 25 key sectors have been covered like agriculture, automotive components, aviation, roadways, pharmaceutical, renewable energy, healthcare, to name a few. Our focus also includes bringing our industrial infrastructure, policies and practices to best global standards and to convert India into a global manufacturing hub. For any developing economy, infrastructure is the backbone of development. Hence, in the last 5 years, India's focus has been to bolster its infrastructure by constructing 40 kilometers of road on a daily basis, modernizing railways, enhancing air and water connectivity, besides setting up 100 smart cities. Our US $30 billion Smart Cities program, which will transform 100 urban and semi-urban centers into sustainable cities powered by state-of-the-art technology, is fast gaining traction. Our flagship Sagarmala program also aims to develop ports along our lengthy coastline for a quicker turnaround in the import and export of cargo. Friends, India is a responsible member of the international community has been playing an active role in the global fight against climate change. As a signatory of the Paris Declaration, we helped establish the International Solar Alliance, the first treaty-based intergovernmental entity headquartered in New Delhi. We are also fast moving towards our goal to achieve an overall renewable energy capacity of 175 gigawatts by 2022. Research and innovation would be the driving force in fourth industrial revolution era. We have a vast pool of skilled professionals with knowledge and energy. We have a world-class engineering education base and strong research and development facilities. In this regard, we have introduced flagship program Startup India to create a startup ecosystem in India. Friends, India's growth story is not only good for the people of India, but also for the entire world. We live in an increasingly connected world. As the sixth largest economy, our growth and prosperity will inevitably contribute to global growth and development. We are committed to make a peaceful, stable, and economically interlinked world. In keeping with our commitment to deepen our economic connect with the world at large, we have extended e-business visa facilities to many countries, including Norway. We would like to have Norway as our development partner in pursuit of achieving our goals and objectives, and welcome the Norwegian companies to participate in our flagship programs. Thank you.
And I think that we can say today that across a number of areas, India-Norway is really, truly extremely good power couple, with Norway as a small country leading the way on sustainable technology and new initiatives, and India's great market and key front-running positions as well to pave the way on renewable energy across sectors. So when we looked at technology, diversity, ocean industries, and energy, there are huge opportunities ahead. Our next speaker out is the Principal Secretary of Transportation and Ports in the government of Maharashtra, Mr. Ashish Kumar Singh. So welcome on stage.
Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am here because the Consul General of Norway, this Anne Olstad, I don't know if my pronunciation is good, was predominantly responsible for most of us to be here today from the Maharashtra delegation. And it's a matter of great honor and privilege for us to be here. Some of the stuff which you've already seen, I had kind of tried to cover it in my presentation. I'll run through it very, very quickly. It's about what India is doing, because I wasn't very sure if we would have somebody from the Embassy of India speaking about India before I would. And so maybe if there's some repetition, I would want you to kind of skip over it. And once again, on behalf of the Government of India as well as the Government of Maharashtra, I want to welcome all of you here for the India Business Day. And would like to tell you that I'm covering this presentation over 4 different segments: the India growth story, the Indian transport sector, then the state of Maharashtra, and the transport sector and the maritime sector in the state of Maharashtra, and the opportunities that it offers for investors coming into Maharashtra. So the India growth story is more or less covered by the representative from the Embassy of India. I will still run through it very, very quickly. We are one of the largest growing, fastest growing economies in the world. We are hopefully going to become one of the largest economies in the world rather soon. And our growth rate is 7.23%. We are, in terms of transport, the second largest railway network. In terms of road, the second largest road network in the world. And in terms of ports, as you can see, a very, very small country, because we have not had too much of a long maritime tradition. As the Embassy of India representative just pointed out, we have a very large middle class of 150 million people. I mean, in some ways very small. And we have an average age of 29 years. So that's like a very, very young population. The growth rate, as I just explained, along with the FDI investments, has already been covered. But I would like to tell you that we have a very, very ambitious program for expansion of highways and the expansion of the rail network, apart from the expansion of traffic on the seas, both in terms of containers as well as in terms of bulk cargo. The key initiatives that the Government of India has taken include this very famous Make in India one. Some of you would have had the opportunity to have participated in it. It happened in Mumbai, and if you look at it, it's looking at actually most of the sectors, and we want to see that 25% of the GDP comes out of manufacturing in the years to come. We want to boost investments in 25 sectors, which include railways, ports, roads, civil aviation, and construction. And since I deal with the transport sector, I'm limiting myself to the transport stuff, but I can tell you that with my experience in the Government of India earlier, wherein I spent in almost 14 years, we are actually a very investor-friendly country now, and we would like you to actually relook at us if some of you haven't already seen it. The Indian transport sector is the most promising one today, both in terms of land as well as in terms of sea. We have an extremely ambitious highway development program in which we are building 35,000 kilometers of national highway under a national program which is being implemented both by the central government as well as by the state governments. And as some of you are aware, India being a federal state, we have a very big program on both sides, the federal as well as the state government. And that makes perhaps India one of the largest highway development the Indian program one of the largest highway development programs anywhere in the world. And most of you have already built all your roads here in Norway, so those companies which intend to still build roads could perhaps have only options of building it in countries like India where roads still need to be built. The auto sector, we have the largest tractor manufacturing base because India is still 40% of its GDP is coming out of agriculture. And still 40% of its people are employed in the agriculture sector. Although the percentage of GDP is very, very small, it's less than 4%. We have the second largest two-wheeler manufacturing setup in the world, sixth largest car manufacturing facility in the world, second largest bus manufacturing capacity, and the fifth largest heavy truck manufacturing capacity, and the seventh largest commercial vehicle manufacturing capacity. And as you would see, most of it is actually in the state of Maharashtra, as I would go further. The effort today is that if we go the way the world has gone, maybe we would become the largest contributor to carbon emissions in the world. And so the whole effort is to somehow go green on the auto sector, because as you can see, the number of vehicles in use today is a humongous 2.3 billion. And we are 1.2 billion human beings. So you can imagine that to cover so many people, the kind of vehicles that we would require is huge. Similarly, even today, if you look at the average number of vehicles per thousand, it's only 22. So if all of us had as many vehicles as the Norwegians have, we would actually be contributing humongously, significantly to the growth of carbon emissions in the world. As I said, the effort therefore is to go electric, and Norway has set an extremely great example where both the maritime sector as well as the road and transport sector is significantly electric already. Our projected growth is to kind of get to 70% electric by 2030. And that's a very ambitious target, but the Government of India has already announced a scheme called the Faster Adoption and Manufacturing of Electric Vehicles scheme, in which all states are being incentivized to go electric. So we are looking at certain corridors to begin with, we are looking at certain cities to begin with, and Mumbai and Pune and Nasik, which are some of the significant important cities in the state of Maharashtra, are the first ones to kind of experience it. The government of Maharashtra has also come out with an EV policy, which incentivizes movement into electric vehicles. The Indian maritime sector overview, you can see that we have about 12 major ports, and we handle almost about 679.4, which is about 680 million metric tons of cargo. And the options that we have are port modernization, new port development, improving port connectivity, a huge amount of port-led industrialization, and coastal community development. As you would know, India also has a large number of poor people who mostly occupy the coast, and their predominant occupation is fishing. So if we until unless we address their issues, maybe this whole idea of development will not have the egalitarian aspect to it, and therefore we intend to focus significantly on skilling them, on uplifting their way of looking at fishing, the way of looking at the maritime sector, and also looking at development of the islands for tourism and other allied activities. So as I said, Maharashtra, which I represent today, is one of the premier states in India. It's on the west coast of India, and its capital is Mumbai. As you would see, that we attract about 40% of India's FDI. We are also perhaps one of the most highly skilled states in the country. We have a population which is, of course, compared to Norway, very insignificant, just about 112 million people. But it's pretty large by most standards across the world. And as you would see, our exports from Maharashtra form a very significant part of India's exports, amounting to almost about $4,500 billion US. The key sectors include automobiles and ancillaries. I've already given you an account of what automobiles are, and we are the hub of automobile manufacturing in the country. Pharma, we are perhaps the most significant hub. 20% of India's pharma output is produced out of Maharashtra. Tourism, as I just explained, we have a 720-kilometer long coastline, and that attracts a lot of tourists. But apart from that, we have 3 World Heritage Sites, and they also attract a lot of tourists. We have a very long history and a huge cultural heritage which attracts tourists. We have perhaps the largest electronics manufacturing base in India, and some of the companies which are represented in Norway, which includes Wipro, TCS, Infosys, they have very significant presence in Maharashtra, and TCS particularly is headquartered out of Mumbai and has a very large presence in Mumbai, Pune and Nagpur. Textiles, we were at one point in time the focus of textiles across the country, but even today we account for almost about 12% of India's textile output. And ID sector, as I just explained, we perhaps are the leaders today in terms of one single location across the world being so important. As an investment destination, we have launched this magnetic Maharashtra effort. This was done by the government, which is currently there in the state, and it has amounted into signing of MOUs involving investment worth $173 billion. The automobile hubs that are there in the state of Maharashtra are in Pune, in Nasik, in Aurangabad, and in Nagpur. And these 4 cities are actually very large otherwise also. They are significant urban centers, significant urban conglomerates, and of them, Pune is the current Detroit of the world, perhaps, because it has General Motors, Volkswagen, John Deere, I mean, you name it, and most of the companies that you would have heard of across the world actually operate out of that place. As I just said, that because we do not want to increase our greenhouse gas emissions, we are focusing very heavily on making most of it electric as far as transport is concerned, and therefore we have set very ambitious targets both in terms of investment as well as in terms of employment in the electric vehicle sector, because we believe that that's a great employment opportunity. And we have also heavily incentivized investment in the EV sector, and I would like most companies present here to kind of have a serious look at doing stuff on the EV side with the state of Maharashtra, because we believe that we are perhaps currently the leaders in setting up the trend for electric vehicles. The intra-city transport, as I just said, we have a very ambitious highway program. We are trying to build 2 very significant corridors. One is the Nagpur-Mumbai corridor, which is about 730-kilometer long super express highway, which is a state-of-the-art super express highway with information technology. And the coastal road. Do I have a minute? 1 minute, okay. So, then, as I just said, that we are a maritime state with 720-kilometer long coastline, and we have 48 notified state port limits, And this is where I think we have a tremendous opportunity, because we have two major ports which are owned by the government of Maharashtra, by the government of India. But within the state government, we have the option of making as many ports as we would like to, and most of the private ports that you see are within the state of Maharashtra. Our traffic is gradually increasing year on year, almost about an 8% growth that you can see, 8 to 9 to 10% growth. And also on the inland waterways side, we have tremendous opportunity. As I said, since India has not been a maritime state, it has not had a tradition of people really being on the water. We would really expect Norwegians to help us in developing our maritime potential, both in terms of inland waterways as well as in terms of the oceans. The opportunities that you can see are greenfield ports, captive jetties, multi-purpose jetties, inland water transport, which includes both roll-on, roll-off. And one of the things that I thought we would perhaps immediately require is moving a large number of our vehicles on the coast for coastal shipping, as well as for transporting humans, because that is an area where we have been lacking. As I said, we have incentivized them. We can even work out individual incentive packages. And again, just a quick review of what are the options that we have, what are the opportunities that we have in the shipbuilding sector. So we have incentivized them as well. Passenger water transport is another area that we would request you to have a serious look at. And as I said, we can build package schemes of incentives for those of you who would be interested in coming there. Flotels, water sports, coastal cruise tourism, these are all new activities. In fact, most other countries have already gone through it. India is new to it, and Maharashtra particularly so. And just to give you a snapshot of everything that I've said, this is what we have in terms of options on the maritime sector. That is transportation, marinas, development of ports, greenfield, as well as redevelopment of our own old ports, and so on, and build these fourth generation infrastructure in terms of ports across the state of Maharashtra. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your patient hearing.
Thank you so much. And thank you for sticking. So, Mr. Singh will be participating in the Breakout Session 2 on Ocean Industries Roundtable for those who are interested to go more into a detailed dialogue with him. And just to fill you in a little bit on his background as well, he has previously held several key positions in the government of Maharashtra and the Public Works Department of the state. And in his previous role as MD of SECOM, a premier financial institution in Maharashtra, he has helped making the state a premier destination for top Indian companies, including Reliance Group, IPCL, Nagathane Complex Bajaj Auto, Ashok Leyland, Mahindra, and Grasim Industries, just to name a few. So I think it's a great opportunity when we have such a good Indian delegation here today and this week to make the most of it, to really form new alliances and new initiatives moving forward. So, our next speaker on stage in our plenary session now is Mr. Soni Kapoor. He is director of the international think tank Redefine, has been based in London for many, many years. He is a young global leader from the World Economic Forum and has a 20-year track record working with public policy and business challenges through research, strategic advice, entrepreneurial initiatives, and building coalitions. And Mr. Kapoor is a governmental advisor to countries such as Norway, Germany, and India, and also working closely with the EU, United Nations, OECD, World Bank, and IMF. So, Mr. Soni Kapoor, the stage is yours for talking about India on the track to be the largest economy in the world. And you will get a clicker.
I don't need one.
You don't need a clicker. Excellent.
Thank you so much. Well, I start with something that's sort of a deeply personal quote to me. When I was in business school, I was not known for being diligent. I was known for being smart but not diligent. And this roommate of mine said something to me I'll never forget. He said, "Soni, you have so much potential. It's wonderful. I love to see the talent you have. It's amazing. But I'm afraid, my friend, that will all it will ever be." There's a sort of similar historical story for India. for those of you who have followed its trajectory since independence, we always had tremendous potential, but we never quite delivered. So the question is, will India now finally actually meet its potential? Will India deliver on the promise that India has always held for its citizens and for the rest of the world? I hazard a bet here that within our lifetime, I think it will. Perhaps not completely, but enough to make India probably the world's largest economy within the living lifetime of most of the people in this room. So the interesting thing about India is it always comes with two sides. There's a sting in the tail, and almost every single thing that presents the greatest opportunity also presents tremendous risks. So it's not going to be a smooth ride, right? So let's look at a few of these factors. Demographics, you've heard about it. So if you look at the present state of the global economy, that's a good place to start to see where and if India fits in. So the present state of the global economy, particularly focusing on the OECD and the EU and rich countries, Norway and our peer, we've had a fantastic run. In Europe, there's been 7 decades of peace and prosperity. It's been a fantastic period of growth, unprecedented in history. It's partly been driven, roughly half and half, by the actual increase in the number of workers. So an actual increase in the number of workers in the OECD contributes to about half of the growth seen in rich countries since the end of the war, right? The second half comes from rising productivity, mostly because of technology, better business models, better human skills, better infrastructure, etc. So these have been the 2 biggest contributors to growth in Norway and beyond. The next big, great thing that we lucked out on in the past 3 or 4 decades, particularly, for example, if you look at how well our investments have been doing, has been a secular fall in interest rates. So what does that do? It raises the prices of all assets, delivers fantastic returns for the oil fund. A third thing has been relative political stability, right? I mean, there was a relative consensus, whether you agreed with it or not, on what a good policy mix was. Policies were predictable, and any time there was a problem, either the central banks acted or there was a fiscal stimulus pumped in. And this worked pretty well up until the last crisis. There has been a general fantastic environment for delivering large gains in income, large rise in prosperity, large financial returns, and relatively low risks and uncertain outcomes, right? Now, where we are today, I argue, is a strong inflection point where all of that is likely to change. So let's look at demographics. The OECD, led by countries such as Germany, you see the impact in Japan, and Norway and France and the UK are not too far behind. We are actually starting to see a shrinking in the number of workers, right? And what will that do? For every time over history that it delivered an actual increase in GDP, this will start pulling down GDP. What is the second thing that is done? Norway is fantastic in terms of technological penetration, right? Whenever there's a new fashionable technology, be it the iPhone or Tesla, we are the early adopters. So there's a downside to this, which is we're actually quite close to the technological frontier, right? And pushing the frontier, as you would expect, is harder than catching up, which means productivity growth throughout the rich world, throughout technological sophisticated world, has sort of seemed to stagnate over the past few years. And yes, perhaps there'll be a new revolutionary invention we haven't heard of yet, but that may or may not come. But the laws of mathematics say that both demographics and productivity-driven growth is going to be harder going forward than it has been historically. Now, on top of that, add a healthy dose of populism, a significant fall in support for globalization across much of the rich world. Yes, the European Parliament elections were encouraging. Yes, Denmark saw a decline in the share of the Danish People's Party in the European Parliament elections. But the fact of the matter is, Trump's trade wars rhetoric is rising. He landed in London today, my home city, abusing the mayor of London. That's a great way to have a diplomatic protocol welcome in London. And there he remains, together with Brexit, the two biggest sources of political risk in the world today, right? Political risk, when I was growing up, used to be out there. It was in Africa, it was in Latin America, it was in Asia. Out of my 10 classmates at the London School of Economics who went to work on political risk, at the time about 20 years back in Africa, Asia, or Latin America, 8 have moved in the past 5 years to working on political risk in the OECD, because, like it or not, we are now the source of the major political risks in the world. It's not India, and it's not China, and it's not Brazil, despite whatever may be happening there. So the reality is, the economic and financial structures we are invested in today, Norway more than most others because of our disproportionately large oil fund, is essentially in a set of economies which face a slowing future, a challenging future, which have very high levels of economic and financial interlinkages, where risks, whether it's currency volatility, whether it's political risk, whether it's support for falling support for globalization and trade, all of this are actually rising, right? So if you go back to what you learned in Economics 101 or Finance 101, or what your grandmother told you, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And that also applies if all the baskets are actually threaded together. So what we have essentially is, if you look at the oil fund as an example, we have the vast majority of our investments, which is supposed to be, for future generations, more than 85% of them, invested in countries which face demographic decline, stagnating productivity, rising levels of, in many cases, Norway and Sweden are not part of that, rising levels of public and private debt, shrinking fiscal and monetary space, rising populism. It's not really the best investment strategy in the world, is it? And this, of course, also applies to our industrial sector and where future growth is going to come from. Let's switch to India now. What's interesting about India is both the size, the timing of its rise, as well as its structure mean that India provides the almost perfect counterweight today to everything I have said so far. For every single OECD country that is facing a demographic decline, the 12 million Indians coming into the workforce every year provide more than enough workers that you should be able to use and leverage, right? For every single thing where the Norwegian market is saturated because we all have dishwashers and fantastic televisions and the latest gadgetry and iPhones, there's hundreds of millions of people in India who are so far from that technological frontier. Even today, only 83% of the Indian population has access to electricity, and I'm not talking reliable access as we take for granted in Norway, right? This is intermittent access. So for almost every single thing that, if you're the development, head of development of the World Bank, or if you are the finance minister in India, for almost every single thing that looks like a challenge, there is a huge investment opportunity and the growth opportunity. Catch-up growth, history has shown repeatedly, is much faster than growth at the frontier. An actual increase in the number of workers, my God, it can do what China did, for example. To add to that is the huge amount of gender inequality in India, right? I mean, it's horrible. I'm a lifelong feminist. There is nothing that irritates me more than gender inequality. Only about 25% of the Indian female workforce is productively employed. I mean, look at the potential that offers. And I think this is the correct way of looking at India. Both honestly in terms of the opportunities provided, and honestly in terms of the risks of always just remaining the promise and the potential. What matters between now and the end of 2030 is going to determine not just whether your investments are diversified, whether you are able to generate significant financial returns on your financial investments, or whether Telenor or your great ocean liner companies are able to significantly generate large profits, whether or not climate change will be successfully addressed or not, whether or not gender equality at a global level will be partly addressed, all of this is partly dependent to a much larger extent than we anticipate and appreciate on what happens in India. And in Norway, what you do, what you don't do, will frankly, in the long term of history, probably not show up as very consequential for India, right? India's fate will be determined not in Norway, but mostly in India. For every Norwegian sovereign wealth fund that does not invest in India, the Abu Dhabi fund or Singapore's GIC will invest. But Norway's contribution to this growth story in India, to the potential of India, either to meet sustainable development goals or to successfully fight climate change or to exploit the huge underexploited ocean potential or to just develop to educate its citizens to be part of a productive growth economy in the world. It will have a huge impact on the shape of the Norwegian economy in the future, 10, 20, 30 years from now. It will also have a non-negligible impact on the Indian economy. Norway, with its track record of great technology, amazing reach within the blue economy, with focus on gender equality and a relatively good track record. I mean, you're very far from perfect, but still, you have a lot to contribute. You have a lot, both in terms of being and showing yourself as the pilot project of the world, to actually having huge amount of excess capital, which is perfect as for a country like India, where the investment opportunities are amazing, but there isn't enough domestic capital, which is perfect for technology transfer, for being able to grow in the huge growing telecom market in India, in the yet to be discovered technology. In the market for human capital, there was a fantastic study by the Norwegian Finance Ministry. And Norway, has an oil fund that's 300% of our GDP. We have got fantastic infrastructure. I know that one particular party in government doesn't think our roads are good enough, but compared to India, my God, they're fantastic, right? We have got still a huge amount of oil in the ground. We have got all of this amazing infrastructure, oil wells, great know-how. And still the Norwegian Finance Ministry thinks that 75% of all future wealth of Norway will come from human capital, right? What is the one country in the world today with the greatest untapped potential of human capital? That is India. 40% of schools until recently had no electricity. More than 1/3 of teachers have no teacher training. If you look at the quality of graduates in India, I went to the Indian Institute of Technology and I was one of the fortunate ones. We're supposed to have a great reputation in the world. But for every Indian Institute of Technology in India, there are several engineering colleges that are basically just money-making machine with no infrastructure, right? There is so much untapped potential. It is a crime against humanity. It is a crime against opportunity. It is a crime against economic good sense to leave that untapped. Without tapping that potential, without giving opportunities to those people, the world will never ever meet the sustainable development goals. Unless and until Norway, with its technology, with its money, for example, and other countries, but more than anyone else, India itself, is able to nudge itself on a different development path which is sustainable, which doesn't consume the kind of energy, which doesn't consume the kind of materials that, for example, China's growth has seen. In 2 years, China used more cement than the United States did in 100 years. Clearly, environmental constraints mean that India cannot go down that environmental path. So, with 50 seconds left, let me conclude briefly. India is an unknown beast that, as yet, I think, provides the single biggest potential for economic growth that the world has ever seen, more so than China. Because it is so far from its potential, the speed of potential catch-up, if things are done right, can overwhelm anybody and everybody. The fact is, investing in India today means investing in growth, investing in the Sustainable Development Goals, investing in fighting climate change, investing in gender equality, if that is what you care about, investing in democracy, investing in the future of a country that in recent memory has not invaded any of its neighbors, despite being in a subcontinent of instability surrounded by Myanmar, Pakistan, China, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Thailand, what have you. This is the biggest opportunity that Norwegian companies, Norwegian capital is ever going to have. It's not going to be all safe, it's not going to be all smooth sailing, but don't miss it. Don't sit on the sidelines. Thank you for having me.
There, I got some sound. Thank you so much, Soni. And Mr. Soni Kapoor will be taking part in Breakout Session 1 on Renewable Energy Roundtable. Our next speaker has traveled all the way from California. Mr. Solomon Darwin is an executive director at Berkeley Haas. He is an expert on open innovation, open business models, and an advisor to senior executives of multinationals and government leaders in the emerging world. He comes with broad leadership experience in corporate management and academia, and is an international speaker recognized by governments, executives, peers, and students, with numerous awards for his innovative leadership and passion for teaching. And Mr. Darwin will share with us his perspectives on open innovation and business models to expand markets in India. Welcome on stage, Mr. Darwin.
Good afternoon. The previous speakers have talked about investing in India. I think that's a great vision. They justified it. But I'm here to tell you where to invest and how to invest. I really believe in investing in organic growth that is scalable and sustainable. It's a long-term vision. And I teach at Berkeley, I teach a topic called Open Innovation. I also teach a course called Business Models in Emerging Economies. Mr. Modi invited me when he came to Silicon Valley to take my students, both the engineering and the business students, to develop models for smart cities, which we did. I did that maybe 3 years in a row. Made presentations to Mr. Venkaiah Naidu, who is the urban Minister for Urban Development, and many of the chief ministers whose cities that we represented. We worked on 3 cities that President Obama had endorsed in India. And the chief minister said, you know, this is great what you're doing. The presentations are great. Smart cities will be built and they'll be obsolete and as the technology grows at high maintenance. But you know, most of my people live in villages. That's where the votes are. You know, cities don't do us any good. So later I was meeting with Pranab Mukherjee, and he said the same thing. And so one of the chief ministers gave enough money for Berkeley to go and set up shop and create models for smart villages. And that's what I do. And I just want to talk a little bit about how this untapped market, and if you want to invest as an investor, as a country, where do we go? You know, problems are great to have. Problems are a blessing. Thank God for problems. Because problems, first, they call for what I call a response, stewardship. Thank God for problems. And secondly, they demand a solution. It means we need to put our creative head, We need to kind of think about innovatively, human creativity, otherwise we'll be useless, we'll be bored. Third, it creates opportunities to expand markets. And lastly, it requires collaboration. It means open innovation, a topic that I teach. The days when people used to not collaborate and capture the market are long gone. Knowledge has to flow. Today's business models have to be built on knowledge flows. As knowledge is flowing, you build your business model on that. It's like a river. You cannot build a business model on a lake of knowledge that is very stale. So that's what I do. There are grand challenges, and every time you tackle one of these things, a grand challenge, and when you are a solution to a problem, people want you, and there's value there, and that's how you create value. You want to be a solution to a problem, and that is the investment. So we have some wonderful problems here. One is poverty there, number one, right? There are 6 billion people in the world who are poor, in the world, and that's 80% of the world. 3.4 billion struggle every day in poverty, according to the World Bank report. And most of these people live hidden in villages or rural communities. They don't have access to resources, information, tools, education. We just leave them there. They're shut off from the world. But they're human beings like you and me with a DNA that is just as potent, created in the image of God, who have the same creativity, but they don't have these resources. And Smart Villages is all about that. The other thing is inequity. The gap between the rich and poor is increasing tremendously as we speak, right? It's a global phenomenon. And urbanization, where people moving to urban, contributes to this big gap. Globalization is not a blessing to the poor because it reduces the bargaining power of the unskilled, according to the reports that we read. I'm an academic. I think I'm the only academic here speaking. Urbanization. Urbanization is another challenge that we have, and all of these challenges and problems are opportunities for us to invest, and to create investments and business opportunities for us. They are solutions. So urbanization, you have, of course, pollution, congestion, crime, and all of the other things that are going with it, and loss of plant life. And every time the cities expand, it's a tax on the planet Earth. That's we need to recognize. And diseconomies of scale, high cost to the environment. So the reason that we took up this charge of building smart villages, of creating smart villages, is to stop this. And why, take people to the slums in cities? That's not a better living. And rural communities and villages, families are separated, in villages. That's not a good thing. We notice that. Labor shortages, no one to till the ground. I might be sitting in the Silicon Valley on high rise on the 14th floor, but how does the food get there? We need the villages, we need rural. Rising suicide rate among farmers, which is one of the highest, and weavers, artisans, goldsmiths, and so on. It's one of those big problems, but these are opportunities for investors through our imaginative technological solutions that we can come up with, and it creates opportunities. This is one of my colleagues at Berkeley this is in the United States, a small population compared to India. Look at the gap between the rich and the poor, right? So you have 0.1 take more money than as much as 188 times more than this bottom people here. That's in the United States. Same thing, and the gap is widening. It's not only big, but it's widening. That's in the United States. And in Europe, it's the same thing, right? You can see those numbers there. But I'm more concerned about where most of the people live in the world, like India, right? 9 richest people in India own more than bottom 50% of Indian population. That's 9 people own more wealth than 600 million people combined. So, and these people live in rural areas. And if we can find solutions, and today I think we can do it, it takes a Viking spirit to do it, right? The Norwegians, we can face up to this challenge because we have technological tools that are digital that can solve this puzzle. And I think that's where I want to challenge my students and challenge you today to make it happen. China, the numbers are not, I couldn't get good numbers there, so I don't know, but I know they're in the same boat. These are the 4 questions that I would like to answer. May not all be here on this stage because I have a time limit here and the clock is running, but I can sometime during the day, but I will try to get to 1 or 2 of those questions there. The first question here is, where is the untapped market? Because that untapped market is a source of innovation. It keeps us thinking, right? And it is also a source for foundation for organic growth that is more sustainable and scalable for us, for the business models. And the other question that I would like to answer is, why do traditional business models fail? Why do they fail? Why they don't work anymore? The business models of yesterday are useless today, right? How do you capture this market, and how do you scale it, and how does that work? And that's one of the things that I would like to answer sometime during the course of the day today. And number 4, what frameworks are required to make this happen? I've been working for the last 2.5 years with the Indian government. We have signed an MOU with 3 different states, and we work with the chief ministers in many villages in developing prototypes that are scalable, because building villages is totally a different game altogether. So the first question, where is the untapped market? This is a chart that shows you that there are 1.5 billion rich people in the world, and they're growing at a very small pace, about 2.5% or so. And we make products for them. All the global companies, they make products and services for them because they have deep pockets. It's low-hanging fruit that is in the quadrant number 1. Any monkey can do it. Low-hanging fruit. And number 2 is where we leave these people in villages who are disenfranchised people, who don't have access to information, to markets, to tools, and knowledge. That's easy. Low value, low cost, it's crumbs off the table. That is easy too. Any monkey can do it. Number 3 is hard. That's where I work. Number 3 is hard because a poor man wants high quality at low cost. And that takes innovation. It's hard to achieve. Number 3. But the number 3 is an opportunity for us here. There are 6 billion people there that are growing at 7.5% GDP versus the meager of the rich countries that are growing only at 2.5%. It is no-brainer for investors like you and me to say, where should we invest? Where is the growth? How do we empower people, build people, scale them? That's the answer. Can we do it? We can do it. Vikings are known for that, right? I read about Vikings when I was a little kid. They are daring. They have guts. They have gall. They can do it. They have discovered America. If you can't do it, no one else can do it. So I'm challenging you today to do it. We can do it. What is a smart village? I define smart village totally different than the rest of the world does, including the Indian government. Every time I say I'm here to build smart villages in India, they say, oh, where are the roads? Where are the toilets? Where is the library? Where is the infrastructure? I said, I'm not here for that. Building smart villages means it's building people. It's empowering people. Empowering people. Because that's more sustainable and scalable. So the way I define it is right here. I hope that it works. Oh, there. A smart village is a community. It's people. It's people empowered with digital technology. Digital technology because it's mobile, affordable, it's powerful, right? It's transportable, no learning curve there. It is a community empowered by digital technology and open innovation platforms. I'm going to describe what that is. A platform is something that you scale very, very fast. That's what Amazon has done, Facebook has done, Google has done. Its platforms organically accelerate the speed in growth. So if you create a prototype for a smart village, it should grow on platforms, and that's what we're developing at Berkeley, Smart Village Platform. It's a community empowered by digital technology and open innovation platform to access global markets. What that means is a poor lady in India, or a poor farmer in India, or a poor goldsmith in India, or a potter in India now can put those products online, take a picture with their phone, and sell it to someone in San Jose, California for 100 times the price it's getting now. You see what that means? That's global access. We shut these people down. There are ladies in India who they haven't learned English, they didn't go to school, they can take the camera, take a picture, put it online, and it is sold in California. So the ladies who are committing suicide before because they couldn't sell their fabric, now they can live and sustain. It's about empowering people. A smart village is about empowering people. So we don't waste time and money in building roads, because roads, buildings, infrastructure, people will build it anyway. These people in villages don't need PhDs, they need access, they need information, they need tools. And that's what we're offering there, and they're all digital in nature. Let's see. Yes, I also believe that a village is a community. It's people. It's caring community. It's an ecosystem, which means it's interdependent on one another, right? Your human body is an ecosystem that is so efficient that all work wonderfully in cooperation and coordination. I also believe a village is a brand. Every village you go to is unique. This is a potter's village. This is a weaver's village, right? It's fisherman village. It's a brand. It is a business model. I believe every village is a business model because it has assets. It has tacit knowledge of people. It has expertise. You can take that value and create it, but they just need that opportunity. The last one is a platform. A platform is something that takes you from a small remote place in India, and you can sell it across the world. That does cutting out all the middlemen that extracted value from these people, kept them as slaves. It eliminates middlemen, and it offers speed and offers higher margin revenue. A sustainable investment. So I want to encourage you, yes, smart cities are good. When Prime Minister Modi said, well, we're going to build 100 smart cities, I haven't seen one yet, but even if you build one, high maintenance, because technology today becomes obsolete tomorrow, you need a new one, you need to maintain it. But when you invest in people, it's for the long run, it's sustainable. You have 1.4 billion people in India, and 70% of them live in villages. We have 650 villages in India. That's a lot there. So even if a Western company were to go in and make $1 out of every Indian, that's $1.4 billion on one single sale. That is the power of scale that India offers that no one else can. And that is what India can offer, the power of scaling. So it requires a new business model, a new way of thinking. You can't go with this low-hanging fruit, like I showed you earlier, high margins, low volume. We need high volume and low margins, right? And that's the game. And this is just to illustrate, you know, I used to be one of those young men, carried all those things around, paid for all that. Now I don't pay for any of that because I just buy one gadget, and that gadget gives me all of these wonderful features. It's mobile, it's more powerful, there's more technology there than on Apollo 8, Apollo 13, and all those Apollo projects. Right? That's how it's speed. And this is what we want to empower people in every village with, and give them access to platforms that they can be connected to the world. It's like one of your organs in your body not connected to the brain. We need to bring that, we need to make it happen. Let us not disenfranchise the world that's living there, but we need to include them in the inclusive growth. And that's what Smart Villages is all about. Let me see if I can speed up some of these things because I don't have time. The reason that the traditional business models fail and large companies are becoming irrelevant to the world today is because of this. When they become very large, when they're young, they're like leopards, like startups. They can take U-turns, flex, adapt, change the business model, and because they can. But when they become elephants, they can't move. They need younger spirit in order for them to move faster, and they die, all right? And that's a depiction there. But you need another life. So business model today is useless tomorrow, so what we need to constantly come up with new ideas, and that is why young startups around the world are very, very important. Our best ideas for smart villages come from startups, young startups. I'm working with 26 Silicon Valley companies in smart villages. I invited them. I invited Google. They came. They invested $250,000 to pivot. IBM, Ericsson, right? Cisco, all these companies. But the best ones that came and did some great work are startups because they're lean. They don't have all this extra baggage. So their models are much, much better. So we need innovation, definitely. And so in order to do that, we do need to become like a leopard when a company dies. And then I believe that startups are a solution to that. I guess we are running out of time. Huh? That's all right. That's okay. So we'll talk more because I have a lot. I can go on for several hours. But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Darvid. And luckily, there will be more time for talking because in our breakout session 5, which will take place in this area, hosted by Oslo International Hub and Nordic Hub India, Mr. Darwin will be participating. But before that, we have a few more names coming up here on the plenary session. And our next speaker out is Helge Tviti, Director of Innovation Norway in India. He will talk about the world's largest emerging market with huge potential for Norwegian companies. Welcome on stage, Helge, and here is your Tviti.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here and see such a good crowd. There's been a lot of speakers that have said a lot about the opportunities in India. I'll show a few slides on the market and the market size, and then I'll try and become more concrete on the different sector areas in India. Firstly, India is really not one market. This is a continent. It's huge. There is 16, 20 official languages. There's a lot of different culture, etc. It seems like it's very much the same when you come the first time, but after you've been there a while, you see the difference. It's kind of like Europe. It's more diverse than Europe. So you really need to understand where you want to go and what you want to achieve, and take some advice on that. And it's big. I'm not going to go through all of that because it's already been fairly well covered. I thought it was interesting to show a few slides. If you go back to 500 years, India and China were the biggest economies in the world. In the 700, India was the largest economy in the world. At that time, Norway, Denmark had 3 trade colonies, and what's today's India. And then in the late 1800 and the whole of the 1900, India and China has basically been out of the 5 largest economies. But we see that what's happening is that they will be coming back. And now that Modi has been re-elected, I think we will see a lot of change coming in India in the years to come. And this is the projections from Standard Chartered Bank of the different size of the different economies in 2030. It's only 10 years from now. And India will be, at that time, number 2. It's a growth of almost 400%. So a lot is happening. And also, you'll see that Indonesia is coming up as one of the biggest economies. And if you look at this, you see the population. In South Asia, there will be almost more than 2 billion people. Much more than China and the surrounding countries. And Indonesia will be, or the ASEAN countries, will be more than 700 million people. And in Africa, it will grow with 500 million from now till 2030. And if you look around here, you'll see this is an area of a lot of water. It's only 4 countries, Afghanistan, Nepal, Bhutan, and Laos, that's landlocked. And what does this mean when it comes to shipping, for example? We know that most goods in the world are shipped at sea, 90%. I'll get back to that. Another thing is, when you look at the population, the structure of the population in India is very different from what you see in China. In India, more than 60% is under 40 years old. So in China, there will be an issue when it comes to taking care of the elderly, etc. I'm not saying there's not going to be an issue in India, but much less so, because there is a much better distribution of people. Ocean economy, the blue economy, is getting more and more focus, and this is the area where Norway is at its very best. It's also an area where Norway and India have just signed an agreement when the Prime Ministers met in January to cooperate. And it's a number of areas called maritime, marine, oil and gas, deep sea mining, it could be cleaning of oceans, etc. I also would include aquaculture in this portion. And think back to the map, and again, 90% is being transported on sea. And currently, the infrastructure is not very good when it comes to sea transportation in India. But there is high focus on it, and this will hopefully change. Therefore, there's a project, Sagamala, focusing on the harbors and building out the infrastructure at sea, coastal. And we see also that the amount of goods being transported will increase with 150% within 2025 from 2015, and building new harbors, building new infrastructure. In addition to that, there is the inland waterways, 106 of them, where there will be focus on transportation. Yes, there will be a lot of highways built, but it will be less expensive and more economic and environmental friendly to get the transportation out in the sea, coastal sea, and inland waterways. Another thing that's happened only 5 years ago is that there was an agreement between Bangladesh and India on transportation. I mean, these are two big nations, 150 million plus in Bangladesh. And 5 years ago, you had to transport via Singapore or Colombo if you want to ship something from Bangladesh to India. Doesn't make sense. This has been smoothened up, and there's a lot more cooperation. And then you can also take advantage, for example, of the inland waterways going to the northeast through Bangladesh. A lot of opportunities here. And when it comes to the inland waterways, we have a lot of technology in the shipping area. And ro-ro ferries, and not at least when you talk about the draft of the ships, they're looking for a draft from 5 to 2.5 meters for the inland waterways. The ships that we are making on the west coast, the catamaran type, only have a draft of 1.5 meter, and they can load a lot. So I think in design and engines, etc., we have a lot of opportunities to support India. Tourism, that's a thing coming up, both on inland waterways, and Norway is a big cruise ship nation as well. The first cruise ship line has been opened between Mumbai and Goa. So this is an area coming up. The traditional area we've been working a lot with the maritime exporters from Norway is, of course, towards the shipyards with all sorts of equipment. To take advantage of the coastal shipping and the inland waterways, a lot has to happen when it comes to shipbuilding. And there we are in the forefront. India has focused a lot on LNG. They have 4 big LNG terminals in India. This is also for security reasons, because transporting gas, which they are very much dependent on pipelines on land, it could be a security issue. So get floating gas and do a regasification is a big area. The problem, as I see it, is that the infrastructure to take advantage of it, for example, on the shipping side, is not there. And if you look at the LNG terminal in Cochin, it's running basically on 10% of capacity because the pipelines are not there and land issues, so you can't get it distributed. So there, for example, all of Norway's knowledge, and we're probably the most knowledgeable when it comes to shipping run on LNG, with approximately half the world fleet on LNG, running on LNG. So this is an area where we definitely can work more closely with India. We can work with them on electric ferries. We can have, like this boat on the left, down on the left. It's basically sewage factory to clean sewage on board the ship. You can put it out on the coast, connect it, and create drinking water, fertilizer, and biogas out of it. And it doesn't take any land. And on the right side, you have what's being developed on the west coast now of Norway, which is like a kind of subway on the sea, or whatever you want to call it. Typically areas like Mumbai could use that, and then there's the distribution of cargo. Right. Aquaculture. India is one of the largest producers of so-called seafood. So this is an area, oh God, I have 2 minutes. So this is a big area for Norway. And we see it as happening now with a lot of Norwegian companies looking at setting up recirculation systems in India. Fisheries, we have a lot of know-how. We have been cooperating with India in this area also for a long time. And a lot can be done. There's a lot both on the fishery side, but also on the aquaculture side. Oil and gas, all elements. Norway, just the know-how side, in Norway we take out 65% of the reservoir. In India it's less than 25%. So we have a lot of know-how that can be used in India. Import of oil, the requirements in India would be the same as Norway and Venezuela and Australia can produce together in 2030. So a huge increase in demand. Renewable energy will be covered, I think, later quite substantially. India is only per capita using 1/20th of what we use in Norway. There's a very big focus on renewable energy in all sorts of areas, and we see that the use of coal is gradually becoming a smaller part of the total mix. Very much focus on sustainability in all sorts, green tech, and health care opportunities are waste. It's a big population. In all areas of technology, and this is an area where Norway spends a lot on research and we have a lot of know-how, but we do not really market what we can offer in a very good way. India could be a huge potential market for this. IT, you all know that India is the biggest. I think there's 55% of all IT services in the world comes from India. So IT in all fashions. Roads has been mentioned. We're pretty good at tunneling in Norway, as one area. Defense, long defense line, both towards the sea, but also towards a number of neighboring countries. They're the biggest, or one of the biggest buyers of arms in the world. And then, of course, science and technology. We do cooperate a lot with India in this area. There's been 18 calls or projects, specific calls for India, and 100+ project. And the focus areas will be grid and energy and oceans in the years to come. So, there's a lot of Norwegian businesses in India, 107 that we have counted, and they're spread throughout the whole of India, and there's a big growth. The gross growth of number of businesses in India up to 75% over the last 5 years, 57% net, which is substantial. And we have a big team in covering all this, these different sectors in India, and we're there to support you as good as we can. So just take contact whenever you can, and thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Helge. Diversity as a driver for innovation and business. So, welcome on stage, Sandra.
Hello everybody, good afternoon. I would like to thank Anne Ollestad for the opportunity to be part of the Indian delegation. I was here in March in Oslo, and it was a fantastic experience at the SHE conference, and I didn't expect to be back so soon. So as Birgit has told you a little bit about my background, I work in the maritime industry. I'm second generation in the family business, and being in the industry that is so male-dominated, very often at meetings, at gatherings, got me thinking as to why we don't have more women in the industry. There's definitely need for more talent. We keep lamenting on the fact that there aren't enough qualified people in the industry, and then by disregarding women, we're disregarding 50% of the population, and we're like 1 billion people, so we are not unleashing the power of 500 million. So I set out to study the business case for business expertise in the industry. because investing in women could be industry's best decision. So when I started reading about it and researching, I actually found that when we refer to diversity, most people usually think it's to do with identity, which is with the gender, generational, LGBT, which if meaningful could translate into cognitive diversity, differences in representations and categories that we use to, make sense of data. But if, in thinking about how identity diversity correlates and influences cognitive diversity, we must guard against claims such as being something called a woman's perspective, which is very often said. They have one token woman on the board of companies, and it's now mandatory to have an independent director who's woman, to say we have a woman's perspective, which is not always true. It's better to recognize that our identities consist of multiple dimensions that collectively influence what we know, how we see, and how we think. And while identity matters, it's also not the only contributor. Our experiences, formal training, work activities, social network, and preferences all contribute to how we think. Now, I'm a business person, so if you're looking to solve social issues, then we know diversity is crucial to success. But I need to care about what customers want, revenues and profits. What's good for the bottom line? So unless diversity, improves decision making, diversity is not really relevant to us. But in simple words, if people think differently and they bring different lenses on problems and solve those problems, I feel that would lead to more innovative solutions. There is a little bit of research that we did, and what we found is that when a team applies diverse ways of thinking to a task, whether it's solving a problem, making a prediction, or coming up with creative and innovative ideas, they don't get the average of the individual answers. They do much better. In fact, on complex tasks, diverse teams outperform their best member. So it's clear we need talent, but we need diversity. When we say diversity, people immediately invoke considerations of social justice and equity. They think that being diverse sacrifices excellence, but that is not true. We need diversity to achieve excellence. By reframing our diversity initiatives as strategic policies that link to mission, companies can actually build better, more successful teams and fuel innovation. The maritime industry, from where I belong today, is like several industries being disrupted. Digitalization is changing the way that we do business. It's threatened a lot of companies, and I see it as a huge potential, huge opportunity for us to actually think what we can do. Corporations such as those of Maersk with IBM on blockchain, progress in autonomous ships are clear indications of things to come. Companies which will not innovate will stagnate. We have already seen several traditional business teams that were unable to plan ahead due to the lack of diversity. Another important aspect of Indian culture is that while respect is given to age, it is clearly apparent that today's workforce can span generations. We have boomers, Gen X, and millennials. Each generation brings to the table different expectations about work, as well as difference in communication styles, how they use technology. And we do need the right mix of all these people to build bridges rather than create silos. The impact of diversity on innovation is coming into sharper focus as executives increasingly try to harness the power of this issue for drawing business goals. Last year, as part of the Gender Award conducted by Sandvik in India, I was one of the winners, and they agreed to fund my project. My project was to get data for women in maritime, because surprisingly in India, there is no data for women in maritime. We do not know how many women are there in the industry. Last November, I was introduced to Heidi Avan, who's here today, and hello Heidi. She told me about the SHE and the SHE index that she was doing in Norway. And I found that there was no better way We didn't need to reinvent the wheel. This is a great way to bring a Norwegian solution that meets an Indian need. So by tying up with She, we launched India's first survey to get data for women in maritime. We've got responses so far from 205 companies and 800 women working on shore and at sea. While the final report is still not generated, initial findings I will share with you. They indicate that there's a clear connection of companies that had a greater gender balance as being those companies which were more innovative and far more successful. Hence, given the importance of globalization and technology as drivers of performance, we looked at the impact of these two factors on the relationship between diversity and performance. The diversity impact was highest for companies that had a high emphasis on digital innovation as measured by their digital investments. This is perhaps not surprising given the high innovation potential and the low degree of maturity of digital technology in maritime. With many companies playing digital catch-up, we believe that diversity is underappreciated and an underexploited tool for magnifying innovation efforts. Then again, as Arundhati spoke earlier, we can all see the huge potential in India. And what better way than use the tools that are available in Norway? I feel collaboration is the key to a win-win solution to both countries. The ultimate goal for me, while ambitious, as I see it, is getting all the listed companies to take the She Index as a tool, thereby giving diversity the importance that it deserves. I look forward to sharing more views with you all in the breakout session, and we look forward to more collaborations between India and Norway. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Sanjam. And your opportunity to talk more in depth with both Sanjam and her Norwegian partner, Heidi Aven, in the She community, is in the breakout session 3, Diversity, a Business Case from IT. But we still have 2 more speakers to go. And I want to welcome on stage Fridtjof Fossum Unander, the Executive Director of the Research Council of Norway, talking about priorities and opportunities through the funding and support ecosystem. Welcome on stage. And the clicker is yours.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you to the previous speakers, all of them, very inspiring talks. I think this is a very good opportunity, a very good gathering for discussing Indian-Norwegian priorities and collaboration. And I also want to just stress the fact that the previous speaker made about diversity. I think diversity is an important driver, not just for innovation, but also to perform good research, which is the topic that I'll talk about now. But so I just want to highlight that in the beginning. Let's see here. We heard earlier today that, let me see here, I'm not good at clicking, obviously. Here we go. That problems can be a driver for innovation. We can also, I prefer calling problems challenges. We all know we have global challenges, not at least linked to energy, climate, and the oceans. And since these are global problems or challenges, we need to find global solutions. And that also implies that there will be big opportunities for those who can provide the solutions, since these global problems imply global markets. This is, in a sense, quite obvious, but it's also a very important direction for how we work with research and innovation, which is also why global challenges has is an important priority when it comes to the R&D priority setting in Norway, both in terms of solving challenges, but also highlighted as opportunities for value creation. The Research Council is in Norway. We have one Research Council in Norway, and our role is clearly then to follow up the priorities set by the government when it comes to R&D and innovation policies. Just quickly on the role that we have as a research council in Norway is that one thing is that we do fund research, which is clearly very important for all the researchers and the industrial companies receiving support from us. I should mention that we do fund research across all thematic disciplines, all the way from basic science and to innovation projects in industry. And we receive, in fact, funding from all ministries in Norway. So we're sort of also a sort of combination central of research funding in Norway. So that's one role. The other role is that we also provide advice to the government when it comes to R&D policies. This includes also advice on how we work with international collaboration in specific topics and also more in general when it comes to R&D priority setting. We also work on network and dissemination, very important for research. Internationalization is very, very important in Norway. International collaboration in general is of course important when you're a researcher. There is no national competition when it comes to science and research, it's always a global competition. But for Norway, collaboration, research collaboration is also a very strategic important priority given that we're a small country with a very open economy. And with high ambitions when it comes to international collaboration in general, and research is part of also that what we could call science diplomacy. So that's key roles that we do have. We, in our role to advising the government, but also in order to stimulate research and innovation, we develop specific strategies. One is related to sustainable development. This strategy lines up clear targets for the Research Council work when it comes to the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, focusing on both developing the knowledge that we need to solve these challenges, but also to mobilize industry to see the opportunities that the Sustainable Development Goals implies. So we have focused on this both when it comes to research financing, when it comes to our activities to mobilize industry, but also public sector in going after these opportunities. And last but not least, we put focus on sustainable development when it comes to international collaboration, in that we prioritize calls and collaboration that works towards the SDGs, that's very important. And we also try to organize our own funding so that we support that in the most efficient manner. So that's that part of the setting. Within our strategy, we also highlight some key priority areas. Not surprisingly, both oceans and energy are part of these priorities. And I'll just say a few words now about the Norwegian priorities when it comes to oceans first, and then afterwards on clean energy. Priority areas in ocean, quite broad. We have a very strong maritime sector, which I'm sure all of you know, given that this is the start of North shipping. Strong on maritime technology. This is very important also when it comes to the development of the petroleum sector, the oil and gas sector in Norway. There is a technology link there, which is very important. And to an increasing degree also linked to the aquaculture sector and the fisheries sector, the technology development factor is important. But of course, when it comes to fisheries and aquaculture, also the environmental, the biological, the ecosystem parts of this is very important. Offshore renewables is something we hope will be a growth area, also in collaboration with India. I'll get back to that in a minute. The last two bullet points here are highlighting the importance that Norway put on sustainable management of ecosystem and marine resources. Very, very important. Without a sustainable harvesting of these resources, there will be no long-term value creation. And linked to that also clean seas and healthy seafood. I'll be quick, I see the chair is getting impatient here. When it comes to energy, we have quite a broad focus, including key areas when it comes to renewable energy. Offshore wind, already mentioned, an area that we certainly hope we can have a stronger collaboration with India, but also solar, hydropower and bioenergy. All areas where collaboration with India is very important. We'll hear more about hydropower in a minute, I believe. Carbon capture and storage important, also to lay the foundation for developing hydrogen solution, which in turn is important when it comes to developing low emission and zero emission maritime transport, which is a key priority in Norway, both from the maritime side but also from the energy side. Integrating renewables into the energy systems, a very important area, complicated but also opens up for big market opportunities, and of course digitalization in the energy sector in general, very important. And buildings and industry focus on a wide range of solutions. So this is our toolbox, these are our priorities when it comes to funding and calls related to related to energy. Let me then wrap up saying a few words about the collaboration with India. I'll be quick, I promise. India is a prioritized country for collaboration, and research is highlighted in the governmental strategy for India collaboration that came out last year. One of the 3 measures to fulfill the objectives of this strategy. Both oceans and energy and climate and environment are important areas and prioritized areas in this strategy. This was also highlighted during our Prime Minister's visit to India in early January this year, where this MOU on the ocean dialogue was signed. There was also signed, or at least in the aftermath of this visit, there was signed a letter of intent when it comes to a framework for collaboration on marine litter, marine pollution. This is something that we have followed up in a call, focusing on marine litter, with focus on Asia, clearly open for also Indian-Norwegian collaboration. We have other calls that are out and have been out when it comes to collaboration with India. I could list them here if I had more time, but we'll get back to that some other time. I just want to mention that we also stimulate collaboration. We also work with collaboration with India via Horizon 2020. And I believe there will be an upcoming call when it comes to smart grids and collaboration between EU and India that Norway is keen to participate in. Okay, so I'll wrap up. We believe there are huge potential for collaboration with India in many of the areas that we discuss here today. The Norwegian government sees research as a priority topic when it comes to the Norwegian-Indian collaboration. And finally, the Norwegian Research Council is keen and eager to contribute through our calls, both the calls that we provide on a national level, but also the calls that we develop in collaboration with our Indian partners. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Birgit. And our last speaker out for the plenary session is Hege Brende, Executive Director of the Norwegian Hydropower Center. And while Fridtjof will be taking part in the Renewable Energy Roundtable, that's Roundtable number 1, Hege is also part of that. And when she is done with her introduction, I will guide you through which areas have which topics. And we'll get to see some videos from the Indian delegation. But firstly, Hege, last woman out on the main stage. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction. Do you hear me well? Last woman out from this program. It has been an exciting program, very diverse. Fridtjof, you had a good introduction because I'm leading a center which is mainly or partly funded by the Research Council, and that's FME Hydrocen, Research Center on Hydropower Technology. And I'll see if I'll try this one as well. Yes. I'm very happy to be here. I'm also very happy to say that we are probably, right as of today, the world's largest collective efforts on hydropower research. There's some key figures there. I won't go delve too much into them. We have 400 million Norwegian kroners, approximately 40 million euros over 8 years, and we are approximately 100 scientists. And India is one of our collaborative regions. There is a nice family, I used to call them that. This is some of our main contributors in our consortium. And some of the success criteria behind driving innovation and value creation to research is to have a partnership between industry, public sector, governments, and of course the researchers itself. So, globally, hydropower is actually quite a big player when it comes to renewable energy. It's also the major player in Norway in contributing to our electricity production. 96% of the Norwegian energy production comes from hydropower onshore. We have had more than a century of development and experience with hydropower and hydropower technology. We have had delivered excellent engineering solutions. We're one of the first countries to deregulate the electricity market, and we are also delivering new solutions continuously to improve environmental design and impacts from hydropower projects. What we also see is that when we go abroad, we have quite a good footprint, and the term "look to Norway" is quite valid. And so far, this is just a quick overview of where we have our collaborations right now through our center, Hydrogen. And of course, in India, we are now collaborating both with universities and with industries and power companies. And as I flew into Oslo from Trondheim this morning, I got a message that also a new partnership is forming now with UJVN, a power company, a large power company in India. Very happy to announce that, actually. So, why are we outside of Norway at all, since we have so much of it in Norway, and obviously I have something to contribute with, both research-wise and industry-wise. The fact is that hydropower is the largest contributor to renewable electrical energy globally. And there's a lot of talk about new renewable technology, wind, solar, which is really important in order to realize the transition to a renewable energy system. But the fact is, as we stand, is that the quarter of the renewable energy electricity production in the world, 60% of that is coming from hydropower. That means that even though this is mostly considered a conventional energy form, it's been around for a lot of time, but still it is the backbone of the renewable energy system also in the future. So we are now saying that there is a new role for hydropower. Instead of just producing continuously kilowatt hours or energy production, we now have other aspects and other capabilities that hydropower can provide. Because there is an inherent quality to the energy system, is that we actually need the flexibility to store energy, we need flexibility to stabilize the grid, and this is all more important now when we have much more of the intermittent, unregulated energy production from wind and solar. Because as far as I know, we have not yet control over the weather gods. So whenever it doesn't blow or the sun shines too much, where we have too much or too little supply, we need a technology that can be flexible enough to both store energy and to provide the dispatch and power output needed from society at any time. We see that this new role also gives us a strong position. And I think this is something of the argument and also the opportunity that is in the basis between the Norway and India collaboration. There was some earlier saying that the problem is a blessing. And of course, going from a conventional fossil-fueled energy system towards the renewable energy system is basically a lot of problems. And in that field and in that conjunction, we see that hydropower has a new role and also some capabilities that we need to take into account and develop new technology in order to meet. Because the fact is that in order to secure our human civilization, and at the same time also take care of the environment, the planet, the earth, the ecosystems, we have complex issues to deal with. And we need a whole basket of solutions. There's no one silver bullet that can solve these issues. And I think the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, all 17 of them, and underneath those, all the subtopics and sub-goals are actually reflecting the complexity that we need to solve. And in this context, renewable energy is a very critical factor. And when we organize these goals, we see that we have 3 layers of 3 important areas. We have the biosphere, we have society, and we have economy. And what I like to underpin as well is that within the hydropower sector, this is actually a value triangle that we've been working within for decades. We need to operate with profitability, economically wisely. We need to do that in a way that doesn't harm the environment, and we need to do it in a way that sustains human society. So what we did in Hydrogen was a small exercise is to try to see how are we standing, how are we positioned in regards to all of these goals, the SDG goals. And what we see is that, of course, SDG 7 on clean, affordable energy to all is our main objective. But at the same time, we have the capabilities of hydropower, including also mitigation of climate impacts, flood and drought. We have water management. We're talking about the new blue economies. We're talking about pollution. We're talking about sustainability for all persons, access to electricity, the need to electrify transport. All of these are secondary and tertiary objectives that I think also the development and further innovation on hydropower can provide. And we are now also talking about one of the largest economies, one of the largest countries, and also one of those countries that lies under Himalayas, which is called the Water Tower Asia. It is actually 56% of all the undeveloped hydropower potential worldwide lies here underneath the Himalayas. The glaciers in the Himalaya hold 20 times that of those in the European Alps. And we see that the water resources coming from Himalaya reaches 1.5 billion people in over 9 countries. One of those are India. And India's growth is booming. Several of my previous speakers has underlined this and also put very good numbers on this. The World Economic Forum actually has Delhi as the 4th most dynamic city in the world. In electricity, demand is rising rapidly, and India is projected to drive 1/4 of the total energy demand globally. But still, more than 200 million people do not have access to electricity. There's a huge need for an intensified transition towards renewable energy. And in this context, hydropower is one of those technologies that could provide a good solution in order to have a quicker and more resilient transition towards renewable energy. So, we see that there is a renewed need for partnership between India and Norway, especially also within the renewable energy field. We need to access both the competence, the long experience that we have in Norway, and pair it up with the potential, the market, and the booming growth in India. So what we see in the hydropower sector specifically, and in the energy sector more broadly, is that we face those new problems that presents challenges, opportunities, and we have common interests. And these are just a snapshots. I've been so lucky to be in India and New Delhi 3 times in the last 12 months. And every time we have had some progress in our collaborations. So when our Prime Minister met India's Prime Minister Modi and signed their agreements, we were also signing our agreements with NHPC. This shows that these are the practical, maybe the practical proof that we actually do have a common added value. So my last words here is that when Norway pairs its 100 years of experience in hydropower with the existing challenges in India, I'm very sure that we have a common, clean future together. And for India's sake, there are very large opportunities in this catch-up growth where you can benefit hugely, I think, also from the hydropower and hydropower experience from Norway. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hege, and thank you to all the speakers and guests here today who have participated in the plenary session. We are now moving over to the breakout sessions that will start in 10 minutes. Prior to that, we will show some films from the Maharashtra delegation, and there will be some snacks that you can bring, snacks and drinks, to the table that are kindly brought to us by Masala Magic. So thank you to all the organizing partners here, and I would also like to extend a special thank you to the Norwegian General Consulate in Mumbai, who I believe, I talk on behalf of everybody here, really is a key example of how to accelerate business. So, Sustainable Development Goal number 17 is the key here, whether it's about tech, diversity, industry, ocean, etc. Have fun, and just to remind you, session number 1 on renewable energy starts at the far end of the room. Session number 2 on ocean industry starts on the midsection, there are a number, that's hosted by Helge Tryti. Session number 3 is behind the curtain, that is on diversity, a business case for IT. Session number 4 is further behind the curtain. It's hosted by me on circularity, making the most of resources. And session number 5 is hosted here by Jørgen Lein Mathisen in Nordic Hub India and Oslo International Hub, focusing on startups and scale-ups going India. So enjoy the videos, enjoy the sessions. I will be back on stage when we round off the parallel discussions. And I hope you will enjoy it and get a lot of new collaboration opportunities from today. Thank you.